Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. There are some prospects in this NFL draft that I think are sliding a bit under the radar. They're not being talked about as much as some other prospects I think a lot of people have paid a lot of attention to. So that's why I want to dedicate this video to my under the radar guys. Now, this isn't an exhaustive list. I'm pretty sure as I continue to go through this process, I will uncover more guys that I feel like are under the radar, or I might uncover things about these guys that I feel like are under the radar right now that make me less sure about their under the radar status. But nonetheless, this is a reflection of how I feel March 3rd, 2025. Let's get into it. CJ West is the first under the radar guy. I've liked this guy since the college football season. Whenever you watch Indiana play, he was the one guy who was consistently making plays no matter who it was that Indiana was playing. Indiana plays Ohio State. I saw CJ West show up. Indiana plays Michigan. CJ West shows up. Indiana plays Notre Dame. CJ West shows up. Nobody else on that team other than like a couple of other guys showed up consistently. But CJ West was the one I was like, hey, that guy looks like he's ready for prime time. He ran a 4.95 at the combine. 1.73 split at 316 pounds. So I think there's some explosiveness, some pass rush ability for him. And he's a big enough player to where you can play him on rundowns. I think he could be a day 3 gem if you can get him in day 3. I like him a lot. Now, he's more of a finished product type of player. If you're somebody who likes to find guys who have the mold of what you could shape into something that could be great, Zeke Biggers is your guy. First of all, my man's name is Zeke Biggers, and he's 6'5" and 321 pounds. I mean, it just makes sense that this dude would be a good defensive tackle eventually, just like straight up off name vibes alone. But if we're being serious, 6'5", 321 pounds, 34 and 7/8 inch hands. Arms. If he had that big hands, it'd be crazy. Arms. That is almost 35-inch arms. That's insane length there. 5.14 40, which is pretty good, with a 1.74 10-yard split at the combine. And he jumped 34 inches and a half in the air. For a guy who has super long arms, who's already 6'5", already 300 pounds, he can jump 35 inches in the air. There's something there. Now, the production wasn't there at Georgia Tech. There were flashes, moments where you could see the vision on a dude like Zeke. I've noticed him since he's been at Georgia Tech. But, yeah, big ball of clay there. A guy you could shape into a lot of different things, a guy that you can easily see being successful. His size alone might get him put in day 2, but I think he's going to be a day 3 selection. And if he falls to the later day 3 rounds, you're talking about 5th, 6th round, I think he's a no-brainer for any team to select based on the physical skills, not physical skills, but the physical traits alone. 6'5", 321 with go-go gadget arms, and a pretty good 40 time with a excellent 10-yard split for somebody his size, and he has a good vertical to match. So you're talking about the pass bat down ability for this guy is spectacular, straight up off the jump. He also had a pretty good East-West Shrine game. I remember hearing people talk favorably of him at East-West Shrine. CJ West is a similar guy that you heard good things about him. Those are my 2 under the radar IDL guys. Let's talk about wide receiver. Jaylin Noel. Now, he kind of flies under the radar because a lot of time you spend time talking about Jaden Higgins, right? The other wide receiver at Iowa State, the big wide receiver, the 6'4" guy with the good length and the good athletic ability here. But Jaylin Noel is similarly a really good athlete. I thought he had a pretty good Senior Bowl. He did fall into the trap of running those like social media routes, right, where he's just cutting and jabbing and jabbing. Just too much stuff, right? He'll cut that out in an actual game, I would assume. .439 speed, so legitimate burner. 41.5-inch vertical to make up for his 5'10" height. His broad jump was 11.2, so he's plenty explosive. You see that on tape. And I think his 6.823 cone shows that he could just has fluid hips, right? He could cut left, cut right, accelerate, decelerate really fast. And like when you look at a guy who's a smaller wide receiver, right? 5'10", 194 pounds, and he's a small hands guy too. I think about 9-inch hands. You want to make sure that he's a strong guy. So 23 on the bench press, I think, is pretty impressive for Jaylin Noel. He's somebody who could be a 4th, 5th round pickup, day 3 guy. I like him. Let's go to tight ends that I like. I think are flying under the radar. Now, it's hard for a tight end to fly under the radar in this class because this class is so good. We spent so much time talking about these tight ends, but Luke Lachey is one of these guys I think is flying under the radar. I really like him 5th, 6th round, especially for a team looking for a blocking tight end. He's 6'4", 253 pounds, so prototypical size there, 32-inch arms, so the length is not an issue. And I think athletically, he's testing a lot better than most people would assume here, right? 4.8240 with a 156 split. 34.5-inch arms with a 10-foot broad jump and a 4.4 shuttle. So good athlete. When he was at the Senior Bowl, I thought he showed more as a receiver than what he was allowed to do at Iowa. We know Iowa is kind of notorious for this, right? Where they will have these tight ends that can actually do a lot that they don't let do a lot at Iowa, because of the restrictive way that they like to play football. That you have to look out for these Iowa guys. Not saying this guy's going to be George Kittle, but I think there's more there as a receiver to tap from Luke Lachey than what's on the surface. Another guy that I think is in a similar vein, right? Not as tall as Luke Lachey, who's 6'6", 251, but a little heavier than him, is Jackson Hawes out of Georgia Tech. I like this dude a lot. Great run blocker at the tight end position. 6'4", 253 pounds. Again, 32-inch arms. Ran a 4.8240, so a pretty good 40 time. 34.5-inch vertical with a 10-foot broad jump and a 4.4 shuttle. I think he's a guy who could be a blocking tight end, sure, but also be a really good receiving tight end down the line. I mean, his vertical, I think, is pretty impressive. Like, you look at guys like Harold Fainin, who only have like a 30-inch vert. This is a 34, so there's more bounce to him with more size. I'm not saying he's better than Harold Fainin, obviously. Harold Fainin can stretch the field and go vertical a lot better than somebody like, not Terrence Ferguson, but Jackson Hawes. But I think there's a lot there with Jackson Hawes that I would be intrigued by for sure. Terrence Ferguson is another guy that I just can't understand why nobody is as high on him as I feel like I am. I watched the Oregon tape. I noticed Terrence Ferguson a ton when I watched the tape. He's 6'5", he's 247 pounds, 33-inch arms, ran a 4.63 40 with a 155 split, and had a 39-inch vertical. I mean, you talk about guys who could stretch the field vertically. I thought he did that well at the Senior Bowl, and proved that he could be one of those guys. I really like Terrence Ferguson. And he seems to really be flying under the radar. Like, I think you could probably get him in the 5th or 6th round. And if you're still looking for a vertical threat at tight end that late, then I think Terrence Ferguson is going to be a great selection for you. Maybe he has a lot of room to grow as a blocker, but I'll take that room, right? Because he has the stuff that you think you could build a great blocker into, right? The long arms, the 33-inch arms. The vertical is not really a factor there, but the 10-yard split is, right? The 155 split, the good athletic ability. You expect that you can probably develop this guy if he's willing to block, or you can get him willing to block, into a solid blocking tight end. And also have him stretch the field as a receiver because he has legitimate receiver athletic ability. Let's move on to some running backs that I like a lot, that are flying under the radar. DJ Gittens, I think, look, I've had multiple draft crushes at running back this year. I think DJ Gittens is my under the radar crush. Ran a 4.43 40, which was faster than I was expecting from him. He's a big guy at 6 foot 212, so you don't expect him to have to put on too much weight to play at the NFL level. Vertical was a 39.5, a 10-10 broad jump. So all the explosive measurements for him rang out. And when you watch him on tape, the side-to-side cutting ability, the explosive ability, the looseness in his hips, I think kind of stand out to me for a prospect that you would take at his grade. A 1.53 split. I think he's a fit in a wide zone like the Cleveland Browns run. I think he has pretty good eyes in wide zone as well, so he can see the creases pretty well. He can kind of see out that three-dimensional space, right, pretty well and feel it out and then cut himself into that space. Contact balance is okay. I think it's better than most people think, but I think it's not like amazing, but I think he has solid contact balance as well. I like DJ Giddens a lot. I think he's somebody to keep your eye on if you're trying to get a running back, but you're not trying to spend a second-round pick on a running back. Brashad Smith from SMU, another guy who I thought had a really good combine. Look, he's a little light. He's not a little light. He's very light. 5'10", 194. It's pretty light for a running back, right? He's basically going to be a third down back. If he can block, I don't know if he can block, but he's going to be used only in receiving situations. So that's going to probably push him into that Demetric Felton zone, right? Remember Demetric Felton? He was from UCLA, and he was a pretty good receiving back, like kind of in the same vein that Deion Jones was, or I forget if it was Jones, but there was a running back the Browns had. He was like 5'4". He's kind of in that same vein until he picks up some more weight. 4.3 40, which is pretty impressive, but light. But when he was at the Senior Bowl, the smoothest route runner at the Senior Bowl. So have to give him credit for that. I thought his routes were really smooth in Mobile. So really like him. If you're wondering at the running back position, some guys I think if they do fall as UDFA would be absolute steals as UDFA guys. Kyle Monangai, think there's a chance he becomes a UDFA guy. Didn't have a great combine, ran a little bit slower than some people expected. So maybe he becomes a UDFA guy. Jordan James, another guy, good player, ran a little bit slower of a 40 for a guy his size, ran like a 4.5, so maybe he falls out. Donovan Edwards, for other reasons, could be a UDFA guy. The reason he could be a UDFA guy isn't because he tested bad. He actually tested really, really good in Indianapolis. The problem with Donovan is like, he is what I like to call a 3/4 player, where you're like, man, 3/4 of the way through any play, you think to yourself that Donovan Edwards is a fantastic running back. And then he does something at the end that makes you remember that he's not. When he was in Mobile, right, he would run a crisp route, he'd drop the ball. Or he'll break free, he fumbled the ball. I'm willing to work with that as a UDFA or like a 7th or 6th round pick. So, but the athletic gifts are there. The talent is there. The skill set is there to get a plus player out of Donovan Edwards. It's just, can you coach him to be a little bit more consistent? My last under the radar prospect I want to talk about is Ty Robinson. He might be one of my favorites. 6'5", 288 pounds. And like my favorite thing about Ty, some guys are 290 pounds and they don't look like they're 290 pounds. My man Ty Robinson looks like a sturdy 290 pounds. Like, go ahead, watch his combine drills. That man is a brick wall. He's not like the most cut up guy, right? He just got that. He just looked like a guy with grown man strength. And then he runs a 4.83 40. My bad. A 4.83 40 at the combine with a 1.71 split. Again, at almost 300 pounds, he does that. So pretty amazing there. Arms aren't super long, 32-inch arms, but 28 on the bench press. I mean, grown man strength. I love having athletic, strong dudes on the interior or playing power edge in this defense for the Cleveland Browns, especially like if you get somebody like Abdul Carter who's going to be a little bit lighter on that edge. You want to have somebody you could play at a 4-eye that could possibly eat a double team if you want to shift the line down. So I like Ty. I hope the Browns draft Ty. I think Ty could be had in day 3. I think he'd be an excellent day 3 pick. There's clips of him running down Shedeur Sanders, which is why it made me concerned about Shedeur Sanders' overall speed. But that was when I was assuming Ty Robinson was a 5-flat guy. Now that I know he's a 4.83 guy, I'm like, maybe I was just a little harsh on Shedeur. But in the NFL, most of these guys on the line going to be 4.8 guys. But yeah, Ty, I think that's an NFL player. You watch him go through those drills, really violent with his hands, intentional. I like Ty Robinson. I hope the Browns get him. But those are my under the radar guys. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.